Hey guys, and welcome back to this new episode of Complexity of Contrast. I feel really honored that you decided to join today, and yeah, I'm excited. I do need to say that I feel horrible. I'm not gonna lie, I have been sick for the last week, and yeah, I just wanted to say that straightforward because I do not feel as energized as normally. So we'll see where this episode will bring us, but I'm really happy that we're still doing this. And actually, I think this episode is also relatable to a lot of people who might be struggling right now. If they're sick, if you're not sick, whatever, this will become clear in a minute. So, for all the people who do not know me, I'm Anastasia. I'm the host of Complexity of Contrast, and this is just a podcast that is a brain dump. So if you're up for honest content that is relatable and just pure, then you're in the right place. And I'm happy if you decide to come along on this journey together. So, yeah. Okay, for this new season, as you might already know, or if you're a new listener, then I'm going to introduce you to this new season. And that is going to be about critical thinking. And you might think, huh, what do you mean? I mean that we have been subconsciously taught certain patterns, certain structures of thinking that we are not used to question, that we have just absorbed and we have made them fit into our lives without us even noticing or without us ever thinking, hey, are these thoughts, these structures that I've built, are they actually serving me? Are they matching with my mindset and how I want to live, how I want to perceive others and myself? So, if you're interested in that, then definitely come along because this episode is going to be about productivity. Yeah, and some people might already know this, but I have quite a rough history with being productive. And maybe you do too. Maybe you struggle with being productive or being overproductive. And we're just gonna dive into it right now, and I'm excited to share it. So, yeah, let's go. So, the question that I would love to start with is what is your definition of being productive, of productivity? Because if I'm being honest, I think it is different from the actual definition. So, I want you to think about it for a second. Maybe you could pause the episode to truly define your answer. And if you struggle with it, I want to ask you this question. If you reflect at the end of the day and you need to tell me how productive was this day, what do you measure it by? What is your measure of productivity? This question has given me so many different insights about my definition of productivity, how I perceive it, what thrives me, and what I possibly need to change. This insight came really late and I'm still trying to figure everything out. I am not some guru who has the answers to everything and every problem in the world. Like, I'm not gonna tell you that I have all the knowledge and I do not try to sell that. I want you to think critical with me, to share your personal experiences and reflections because that is what makes us human, and there is no right or wrong answer when it comes to experiences and thoughts and feelings. So, therefore, I want this to be an open space. So, yeah. Having said that, I have quite a rough history with being productive. I had a burnout a couple years back, and that had such an incredible impact on my life, on how I perceived every daily little action without me actually knowing that it had such a big load, such, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, everything became so much heavier because my definition of productivity was so incredibly toxic. And I know that so many people out there struggle with being overproductive, because in the case of the burnout, I know that there are so many different aspects to a burnout. Don't get me wrong, I'm not just saying I was too overproductive and yeah, no, there were many different things that I had to work through, still working through, by the way. But what I want for this episode is to make you think about your definition of productivity and if it's actually suiting what you want and how you want to live. And I'm not going to tell you that you need to change it directly and as fast as possible, or that you even have to change it at all. It's up to you, and I'm not going to make any decisions for you. That is up to you, literally. So let us see as a moment to truly stand still with if you're happy with how you live. And yeah, okay, having said all that, oh my god, I'm sensing that my mind is just like really slow and has no idea where it wants to go. But hopefully, we'll have this nice episode to share with each other. So, when it comes to my personal definition of productivity, I realized that it was completely different from the original. So, if you have defined your own definition, maybe relates a little bit to mine, especially if you have a history with being overproductive, this tendency, you know? So I asked the same question to myself. How would I measure my productivity? If I look back at this day or the last couple of days, what did it mean to me to be productive? And it always, to me, had to do with the output. It was striping something off of my to-do list. It was working X amount of hours to get X amount of money. Putting in X amount of study hours to get a certain grade. Like, it was always this thing about what output do I get from it. It was never to me about how did the process go? How did I feel during the moment, during the day? What was the quality of the work that I got done? No, to me, it was all about the output itself. Did I get it done? Yes or no? And maybe this is relatable, maybe it's not. But I know that there are people out there that do struggle with this definition. Because we have been in so many different situations where that is told to us, where that image of productivity is sold. And I associate productivity literally with all these factories, you know, that there are just people working there, and that means to be productive, to get things done, I don't know. It's really difficult to formulate, I sense. But what I do find really triggering is the fact that if I look at how successful my day was, I do not look or do not measure it by how did I feel? Wait, what kind of process did I make? No, it's just about checking things off. And yeah, it's such like black and white thinking. Like, did I get it done or didn't I? And this is where I want to dive in further, because I think it's so important if you sense you have the same kind of thought pattern connected to productivity like this. Maybe we could shift that perspective. Maybe that could actually be really beneficial for us. So, yeah. Because I struggle with this in the past, tendencies of being overproductive, I know that it can have so many different negative effects. Because you tend to work beyond your limits. Because you only focus on the output, on the outcome of your actions, not actually the actions itself. No, just the output. Let me ask you this question, and I think this can be triggering for some people, but I think it's a really important question to ask. How often did you overstep one of your boundaries because you felt the need to be productive? Just think about it for a second. And yeah, it might be triggering. It might be more often than you would like to admit, but I think we all have done this. How often have you pushed yourself to continue to be productive, even though you knew that it wasn't actually productive anymore? Because yeah, I have done that. I know that I have done this way too often. And that's what is so funny, because that is so logical if I look at my personal definition of productivity, because I cared more about the output. So it didn't matter to me if I was sick, if I felt like my mind was just like not working anymore. No, I decided to continue over and over again just to get to a certain outcome. Not listening to myself. Hey, my body is actually giving signs to me that maybe I should stop. No, because I was too focused, too eager almost to get this need of productivity, and it's insane. It's actually causing a lot of harm, I believe. It did in my life. And I know that in some cases, if you struggle with being productive at all, then of course you can use a little bit more of it. But I think in the current hustle culture that we're facing, because that is one of the things where we are being taught this subconscious pattern of the need to be productive all the time, is because we live in this society that promotes hustle culture, that promotes putting in more effort, because that equals more results, better results. Let me tell you, that isn't even right all the time, but this rise of hustle culture implies that we should be overproductive, that could result in better outcomes. And this toxic productivity is killing so many people mentally and eventually also physically, I believe. But yeah, I think we tend to, I wrote this down, and I feel so frustrated when I read it, because it is so relatable, and I think it shouldn't be. So I wrote down, you disregarded the importance of rest in favor of completing productive tasks. Yeah, literally so many times I decided to say no to rest, to say relaxing, I need to be productive. I need to do these certain tasks. Otherwise I have failed. Otherwise I don't know, like, it just feels like I have no choice but to be productive. That resting, like, you literally feel like you're wasting time. You feel guilty when you're not being productive all the time. So you prioritize these tasks that have a certain output instead of prioritizing recreational activities. You decide not to meet up with friends, not to have that dinner with your family, because you prioritize being productive. And yeah, I need to be honest, and I really get emotional by this, because yeah, I am guilty of doing that. And I do not blame myself for it anymore, because I know it came from my definition of productivity. So why would I blame myself for something that I have been taught subconsciously? But I am responsible for reframing that definition. And that is what I want you to consider. If you feel like all of this really triggers you and you're like, wait, I have struggled with this, then please, maybe it's time to reconsider your definition. Because literally the definition of productivity, and I looked it up, and it actually shocked me because it's so logical that this is the actual definition, but at the same time, I have not been living by that definition. It is the state of being productive. It's the quality of being productive that is productivity. And what that means is it's not actually only about the output. It is about the quality of the effort you put in. It's about the state you're in when you take those actions for a certain output. And in my opinion, we do not consider it enough. We do not consider our emotional state, the quality of the process, the effort we put in, because you could spend hours of work into something with almost zero results just because you try to push yourself further and further and go beyond all of these boundaries, but actually not being productive. Like, that is so insane that we feel the need to push ourselves beyond those limits, but at the same time, that doesn't always equal that we will have a better result. So yeah, I want you to sit with that for a minute. And one of the things that I am really curious about is how often we consider productivity to be about the satisfaction of short-term gratification. And what I mean with that is, if I look at my past or still current definition of productivity, then considering it's only about the output that I put in, not about the actual process that I have to face, I always want to see results. My productivity is literally based on the results that I perform. But what I also noticed is the fact that if those results come instantly, or almost instantly, that feels productive. When I know that within a month, I get X amount of money on my bank account because I know I worked, that feels productive. If I put in hours of studying and get a grade for it in return, it feels productive. Because you have this like input, output thingy. And you get something in return for it. You get this gratification of a grade, of money, of validation, of whatever it might be. There are so many measurements of productivity, also toxic measurements, but apart from that, I sense that, for example, working on this podcast sometimes does not feel productive. Or starting a new art project. Oh my god, let me tell you that I have been trying to create more art. I'm really interested in art. I love it, and I find artists just wonderful people, and the creative mind is incredible. But that doesn't mean that I do not struggle with creating. Especially if I get this voice in my head of, but painting this is not actually productive. And I believe that I've been taught to consider making art not to be something productive. To have these creative projects that simply do not make money yet, or might never will. I tend to just believe that they're kind of like, if they not result in money or a certain outcome that makes my life better, then it is not productive. But let me take you back to the actual definition of productivity, and that meant the state of producing something. And that is what I find really funny about what I just said, is it is so contradicting. Because I feel like creating art is not productive. But at the same time, it does result in something. Maybe not in money. Maybe it's not for a grade. Maybe it's not for a certain competition, whatever. But it does result in me feeling fulfilled, in me having happiness while creating. And that is where I think it is so important to reframe your definition of productivity. Because the state of the process might actually be as important than the output, or even more important as some might believe. And that is so incredibly interesting because I know that I repeatedly, subconsciously, have been told that if there's no tangible result, then it is simply not worth doing something. And I know that's an insane thought, but I did live by that motto for years, and sometimes I still do. As I said, literally that thought came up like this week. So it's something that I still try to work on, and I want you to understand that being result driven is not a bad thing. It is not, but it depends on what is your definition of the result, of the outcome that you try to pursue. Because if you decide that you're only productive, only successful, only result driven, if that is attached to money, grades, validation, then it is a toxic definition. Because it pushes you over your limits every single time. And it actually implies that you shouldn't take rest, that you shouldn't do things that balance that out. And I believe that if you see being result driven as more than this tangible results, it is how you feel, of the quality. That's also one thing. I think nowadays we care more about getting something done, yes or no, than the quality of what we have put out there. And that's where art is something so beautiful, because we tend to think a lot more about how can we perfectionize this idea, and we truly think more about what we want to put out there instead of just doing it. And especially with the rise of AI as well, I believe that AI has made it incredibly easy to fix problems. And that makes us believe even more that it is always about the output itself, not about the process. Like, we rather ask ChatGPT something, ask AI something, because we want a fast outcome. We want this output. We care more about having the result, getting it checked off our checklist, instead of, hey, how am I going to actually tackle this problem, tackle this challenge? What is my process going to be like? How do I feel during the process? How do I want to create? How do I want to come to that result? No, we do not care about the way anymore. We only care about the actual outcome. And that is really, I think it's dangerous, honestly, because that means we prefer results over process and skills that we could learn, like the lessons that are out there. So I think we should shift our focus, if you feel like this is relatable, to quality and process when you do something. So not overstepping your boundaries every single time because you feel this need of being productive. It's being honest with yourself that maybe the most productive thing you could do in this moment is take a power nap, is go for a walk, is doing something that you might have been taught that is not productive, but it could be the most productive thing you could do. So go make art, go do things that you feel triggered by because you feel like these are not productive tasks, that you should do something with your life, etc. No, let me tell you that if you do not have that balance from personal experience, you are gonna mess up so much more than you think is even possible. And these thought patterns are gonna follow you everywhere you go. It's not just like, oh, I'm just gonna hustle right now because I'm in my bachelor's. Oh, I need to finish my master thesis. Oh, I just started this new job, so I have to be really productive, etc. No, it's not something temporary. These thought patterns are continuously. The only way we could work on them is by facing them, is by trying to change them step by step. And it's not easy. I'm not going to convince anybody it is. But I hope you are not just convincing yourself that it's just for a temporary time, because no, you are actually using that thought pattern way more often than you would probably like to admit. So yeah. That is what I wanted to share. Actually, I think that might be it. I'm gonna check my notes. Yeah, I wrote one last thing down, and I don't even know what I want to do with it, but I did want to put it into the episode. And that is that productivity could be meaningless if you never feel fulfilled by it. Because I think we feel this need to be productive, to overproduce all the time, because it often results in some form of fulfillment. But let me tell you that if you continuously step over those boundaries, things are not gonna feel fulfilling anymore. And that is how we should perceive productivity. I think it is more about the fulfillment that you feel, that you get out of something, instead of just pushing yourself every time. Because I know that there are people out there, and myself included, I'm speaking for myself right now, that I have overproduced, I have pushed myself over limits, that things did not become fulfilling anymore. But I still strived for all these different things. But actually, even though I did strive for all these different things, for better grades, for higher salary, for more attention, whatever it was, when it was not fulfilling anymore, you do not get anything out there. You do not care anymore about the money you make, the attention you get, the grade you get. Like, you do not actually care about that, because you're so exhausted by pushing yourself that productivity has become meaningless. Productivity is literally meaningless if you do not feel fulfilled. So the next time you ask yourself, was this day productive? I hope you count the things that you felt fulfilled by. Not only the things that has resulted in money or grades or tangible things, whatever. No, I care about, was it fulfilling to you? Did the process make you learn something? Better your skills? Maybe you do not see the results yet, but was it worth pursuing it in that moment because of a feeling, an intention you had? Yeah, that is just what I wanted to share today. I think this episode was a little bit all over the place, and there are probably a lot of more things that I want to add when I'm editing, and then I'm like, no, I can't edit anymore. Oh, I'm letting go of it. Even though I might not consider this podcast or painting or writing as something productive, it doesn't mean it's not fulfilling me. And maybe then it's not that I should try to make money out of all these things. No, it's about changing my definition of productivity. Because when I change that, it doesn't matter if I make money out of it, if I get validation, if I get attention, whatever. No, it's about if it fulfills me. Literally, one of the definitions I found, and I find this the most beautiful definition of productivity. It means producing something of value. To be productive is producing something of value. And I love this definition. And it's completely different from the one I told you personally. But I believe this is so much more truthful than my definition has ever been. Because producing something of value could be money, could be attention, fame, whatever, grades, but it could also be feelings. Abundance is of value. Feeling happiness is of value. Learning new skills is of value. Spending your time doing something you love is of value. So maybe we should shift being successful, being productive, to know that whatever you're doing is of value, so it is therefore productive. If it's impacting your life in any positive way, it is productive. If you're making art and you feel this voice coming up, what am I even doing? This is not even productive. If you're going out with friends, you're like, oh my god, I could have finished so many different tasks within those times. I'm not even making money. I'm not learning. I'm not... Blah, blah, blah. Whatever comes up in your mind, whatever is convincing you of that you're not doing something productive, within that moment, is there something out there that is of value of you? Something you are doing that produces something that is impactful, that you value? Because I believe so. I believe going out with friends is of value. To stay connected with them, to learn about their different perspectives, to spend time with loved ones, that is of value. Creating art is of value because you look at yourself, you allow yourself to create, to explore, to experiment in different ways that might not be possible within your work or studies, whatever. So I want you to notice that voice, because there's nothing wrong with having that voice that is telling you that you need to be productive. Actually, I think it's the most normal thing we face right now in this hustle culture society. We almost cannot be confronted with it. But then you can decide how you handle the situation. Are you going to blame yourself? Are you going to feel guilty because you are not doing a productive task that is only being considered productive by all the narratives that you have been told so far in life? Because you wouldn't feel guilty if your definition of being productive was producing something of value. Because then you would look very different at every situation, at every time that voice comes up. So I want you to think about that for a second, and hopefully the next time that this comes up, hopefully you can redirect the voice, redirect how you perceive that situation, how you react. So that is what I wanted to share with you guys today. I want to thank you guys for today's episode. I do feel a lot of more energized than I did when starting, and yeah, I just hope you got something out of it. Please share your thoughts and experiences and leave comments. Let me know what you thought about this episode, because I would love to make this more interacting. So yeah, that. Okay, guys, I love you. Bye bye. See you next time. Bye.